It's a freezing January night in a quiet Massachusetts neighborhood. Snow falls in thick sheets, blanketing everything in an eerie silence. As the night settles, a life is taken, under strange, almost theatrical circumstances. The victim? A well-respected Boston police officer. The accused? His girlfriend, a mild-mannered teacher. The mystery? One that spirals into an underworld of alleged police cover-ups, misdirection, and whispers of a conspiracy that would send chills down anyone's spine. Today, we're peeling back the layers on the Karen Reed case, a story that challenges everything we think we know about truth, justice, and the secrets lurking in the dark. On January 29, 2022, Officer John O'Keefe's night began like many others. After enjoying a night out, he was reportedly dropped off by his girlfriend, Karen Reed, at a friend's house in Canton, Massachusetts. John, a seasoned officer of the Boston Police Department, was used to high-pressure situations. But nothing in his career could have prepared him for what was about to unfold. Karen, who was reportedly intoxicated, later claimed she'd dropped him off near the driveway before heading home. However, hours later, John's body was discovered in the snow, alone and battered, with visible head trauma. For many, the immediate thought was that this was a tragic accident. But what happened next was something no one could have anticipated. The cold, brutal conditions that night were blamed for John's hypothermia. But soon, investigators turned their sights on Karen herself. As evidence began to suggest a far more deliberate act, Karen was quickly thrust into the spotlight as the main suspect. Investigators found what they claimed were signs of a hit-and-run, damage on her vehicle's bumper, erratic driving behavior, and a timeline that seemed to align with the accident. Authorities charged her with second-degree murder, involuntary manslaughter, and leaving the scene of an accident, pointing to her possible intoxication and negligence. But Karen's family, friends, and supporters saw things differently. Karen, a schoolteacher with no criminal history, was not someone they could envision in a violent scenario, much less one that ended in murder. Yet the prosecution pressed on, building a case that argued she'd accidentally backed into John, left him injured in the snow, and drove away without looking back. This story seemed plausible, but Karen's defense team would soon present an alternative that threw this theory into question. In a shocking move, Karen's defense claimed that John's injuries were inconsistent with being hit by a vehicle. They argued that the blows to his head and the pattern of his injuries suggested something more brutal, perhaps a physical assault. According to them, John had been beaten inside the house of a fellow officer and then left to die in the snow. The implications were chilling. If true, it would mean a cover-up was in play, perhaps orchestrated to protect individuals in the house that night. The defense raised the theory that certain members of the police force were protecting their own, spinning a narrative that deflected suspicion away from them and directly onto Karen, adding to the intrigue. John's injuries were detailed by medical professionals as blunt force trauma to the head, not entirely consistent with being struck by a vehicle. The defense pushed the theory that Karen was innocent and that she was being framed to protect someone else's reputation and career. The case was beginning to seem less like a tragic accident and more like a calculated setup. The evidence presented was ambiguous at best, and it seemed to raise more questions than it answered. First, there was the timeline. If Karen had indeed backed into John, how had no one heard anything? The area was quiet, the kind of place where a loud impact would have likely caught someone's attention. Then there were the injuries themselves. Medical experts testified that the blunt force trauma could have been inflicted by something other than a vehicle, perhaps a heavy object wielded with intent. This fueled suspicions that John had been attacked and left in the cold as part of a scheme to stage the incident as an accident. The defense even suggested that the snow might have been a convenient cover, allowing certain individuals to place the blame on Karen while hiding their own involvement. But without conclusive forensic proof, the case rested heavily on who could tell the more convincing story. While the defense fought to present Karen as a scapegoat, the prosecution held firmly to their theory. They portrayed Karen as a woman who, under the influence of alcohol, made a terrible mistake that turned deadly. The prosecution argued that evidence from the night supported this theory, citing witnesses who had observed her allegedly unsteady behavior and physical damage to her car that seemed to align with their hypothesis. Their theory was straightforward. Karen, impaired, accidentally struck John, panicked, and left him to succumb to the elements. It was a tragic lapse in judgment, but to the prosecution, it was also criminally negligent. However, as the defense cast doubt on their story, the prosecution faced the difficult task of proving beyond reasonable doubt that Karen's actions were intentional or recklessly indifferent to John's well-dash. Being .as, the trial gained national attention. Online sleuths and conspiracy theorists picked apart every detail. Many were drawn to the theory of a cover-up, especially given the involvement of other police officers at the scene. Karen's supporters organized social media campaigns, with hashtags demanding justice for her and transparency in the investigation. Many true crime enthusiasts suggested that the officers present at the scene that night were hiding something. Speculations and theories snowballed online, drawing in an audience eager to expose corruption, whether it was truly there or not. Supporters created entire pages dedicated to dissecting the case, sharing theories, and pointing to gaps in the prosecution's evidence. The case became a focal point for those who believed in systemic flaws within law enforcement. That be why April 2024, after a heated and publicized trial, the jury reached a deadlock. 5 of the jurors believed Karen wasn't guilty on 2 of the 3 charges, but the group couldn't unanimously decide on the charge of manslaughter. With no resolution, the judge declared a mistrial, sending shockwaves through the courtroom and leaving both the defense and the prosecution unsatisfied for Karen. It was a bittersweet moment. She had narrowly avoided a conviction, but she hadn't been exonerated. For John's family, it was another painful chapter without closure. And for those who believed in a cover-up, it was a sign that the truth might be harder to obtain than they had hoped. With the retrial set for January 2025, the stakes are higher than ever. Karen's defense team has filed motions to dismiss certain charges, arguing that her constitutional rights have been violated through prosecutorial misconduct and mishandling of evidence. The prosecution, meanwhile, is refining its case, ready to face another jury and present their argument with more precision. The upcoming trial is set to be another intense legal battle, and the courtroom is expected to be packed with media, supporters, and curious onlookers alike. Karen's future hinges on this trial, and the case has gained even more traction as people eagerly wait to see how it unfolds beyond the courtroom drama. The most haunting aspect of the Karen Read case is the enduring mystery surrounding John O'Keefe's death. Was this truly an accident, or did a conspiracy within law enforcement play a role? Could an innocent woman be facing life-altering charges simply because the truth was too damaging to reveal? These questions hang heavily in the minds of those who follow the case, many of whom are left to wonder how a man's life could end so tragically, and how the narrative surrounding that night could change so drastically depending on who's telling the story. The ambiguity has kept people captivated, and as the retrial approaches, many hope that this time, the truth, whatever it may be, will finally be revealed. Karen Read's life has been irrevocably altered. If she's acquitted, she may find it difficult to return to a normal life, forever haunted by the events of that snowy January night and the reputation she's gained. Meanwhile, John O'Keefe's family continues to seek justice, convinced that his death deserves answers and resolution. For now, the Karen Read case remains unsolved, a chilling reminder of the fragility of truth and the complexities of justice. That in the end, this case serves as a dark testament to the shadows that often surround true crime. Was Karen Read really the cause of her boyfriend's tragic death? Or is she a victim of a much larger, more sinister cover-up? The only certainty is that the retrial will be one of the most closely watched cases of recent memory, and it will challenge everything we think we know about guilt, innocence, and what lies in the dark corners of the justice system.